So, today we're gonna talk about almost all Thunder Aurorians and rate them to find out who the best ones are. And this is actually already the last of the 4 element tier list videos, but don't worry, because I'm going to update all the old ones in a quick video form, when there's at least a decent amount of new characters in one of the elements. So stay tuned for that. And now that that's out of the way, let's take a closer look at the Thunder element. But before we actually can begin, I like usual have to give some disclaimers. 1. Of course this list is going to be based on mostly my personal opinion and experience, meaning it's very likely to be biased, so if you disagree with any of my rating decisions, that's completely fine, and I would be happy if you could share your thoughts with me in the comments down below. 2. I'm also not really going to take breakthroughs of 5 and 6 stars into account, which also leads me directly to point number 3. This list is only going to cover through gacha obtainable Aurorians, meaning Welfares and the Silent Hunters are out of the picture. Why? Because these don't need you to spend your precious loot member and also have way easier access to breakthroughs. 5. I'm going to, like for the last few times, going to split all characters we're talking about into 2 categories, DPS and supporting Aurorians. And last but not least, 6. I'm trying to evaluate all of these Aurorians depending on how they perform in 3 different types of gameplay. Hard content, like Elysium, Spire & Co. Burst heavy content, which would be CC and generally just most boss fights. And of course also general content, which is pretty much everything else. If someone is excelling in one specific type, I'm probably going to mention it, otherwise just pay attention to this rectangle. So, now that all of this is out of the way, let me tell you that if you just want to talk about Alchemy Stars with others in the community, you should probably join my community Discord, link in the description down below. And if you really like my content and want to support me so that I can put out more scuffed Alchemy Stars videos, maybe even think about becoming a channel memer. But enough of that, let's get right into it, by first talking about characters that are underwhelming. These are Aurorians that are simply beyond saving. And like usual, there's barely anyone here, so let's quickly get over with this. Angel. Yeah, she's a 3-star DPS, so yeah. She isn't really worth your time until we maybe someday get 4-star upgrades for lower rarity units. Until then, let's move on to average. Like the name suggests, these Aurorians are sadly only average at best, as there are just way stronger options available. And well, we're going to start this off with Vivian, the poster girl of Alchemy Stars if Vice and Colleen had an unfortunate accident. She's not only our last average DPS, but also a very weird converter support amalgamation, which obviously also qualifies her for a supporting slot in this list, which you can just see at the end of the segment. Because it's not really worth talking about her twice, as converting tiles under the feet of your enemies is not only often not that useful, but probably also not the most aromatic experience. And yeah, her buffs are kinda nice, and reducing chains can sometimes be useful, but as a DPS she doesn't really do much, and as a supporting character she's just subpar in the light of all your other alternatives. Speaking of supporting Aurorians, our first candidate after Vivian for that is Amy. She heals, okay? What else do you want to hear? She's an okay beginner unit, but you should quickly at least switch to Nadine if you actually need any healing services. And while we're already at the topic of providing services, have you ever heard of Lilium? Yes, this is sadly no sponsor, but hey, she's a mate and not only one, which is not gonna help you gameplay-wise because her skill is only okay, a death debuff and a push. Sure, if she wouldn't be a 3-star, she would probably be a bit more usable, but for now we will have to pass on having 1 mechanical mate or 2 or 3, or whatever. Let's just look at our next choice, which is a very loud one, Ansia. If there's dubstep in the world of Alchemy Stars, Ansia is probably the Skrillex of Illumina. Lots of noise, but no real substance. aka Exactly what you would expect from a reset converter. And don't get me wrong, she's not useless, especially because she's one of your only options if you want to reset some pesky debuff tells away. But outside of that, you're never really going to use her, which is a shame as this Killer Kill wannabe does have some quite beefy stats for a 4-star. But I digress. Let's just switch to someone I would describe as small, but oho, or I should rather say Iho, cause that's who we're talking about now. Iho, who's one of the few teleporters in the Thunder element, which definitely gives her a small edge over others here, which is coincidentally exactly also what her TP is. Small. Which means even though this does have an almost non-existent CD, it only gives you a ride to the next corner, hence why she's only an average. And with her being the last one here, let's move on to solid. This describes Aurorians that are not perfect, but just all around pretty solid picks in a lot of scenarios. Like before, let's begin with our damage dealers. And our first pick is the secret big sister of Florine, Cursed Witch Edition. While she might look like one of those questionable designed Souls bosses you don't really know how to feel about, she's definitely not one power level wise, as her biggest asset besides being Best Girl number 9's sister is her pretty nice global sniper chain, but else she doesn't do a whole lot. Her damage is okay, her active is probably not too bad for farming purposes, and if you want some tea, or a bunch of vengeful souls, if that's what you're into, I don't judge, she's also a good choice, similar to our next candidate, but only if you want to get rid of these things, because she's a big eater, a really big one. Obviously I'm talking about this small dragon that our very first collab brought to us. And well, she might be a powerful, mischievous thunder dragon in this show, but that's by far not the case in Alchemy Stars. Here she is sadly a subpar high maintenance sniper that isn't too bad for farming, but pales in comparison to already available budget options, which means that the Reign of Dragons was just not meant to be, and that Kana is most useful for headpads and protecting. Which doesn't really matter cause who knows if those dragons ever come back. But someone who always returns even though we tell her to stay as far away as possible is the Grand Marshal Reinhardt's rival, Wrath. And she's sadly as bad as she's beautiful, truly balanced, as all things should be. But to be honest, I wish that would not be the case when it comes to her active, which for 2 turns makes her a pseudo-detonator with a self-double chain effect. And this bad boy can fit so much damage in it, especially if you pair Angry together with the newest Thunder edition Florine, because then the word of the day is pain, lots of it. I do have to say that it is also a massive pain to actually wait for the skill to be off CD. Because 5 turns, well, at least she does still have a pretty decent global splash sniper chain, which can dish out quite the damage with the help of her EQ, but only as long as you don't run out of bullets, which makes maintaining her, once again, a pain. And while we're already talking about people in pain, Eve. Yes, she did have a pretty dark past, which let not only sins as little sis, but also her skill set suffer quite a lot, as she's kind of just an okay stun bot. Her active just is on a sadly way too high CD, and offers a mostly not that worth payoff in a kind of RNG stun, which means that she will mostly shine in harder content plagued by annoying foes that kind of force you to run a para or a stun in your team. Outside of that, her damage is not the worst, making her okay for farming, but not the worst, as outside of this niche scenario, sadly often not enough, which is also why she's here. Next is the first Aurorian we all were confronted with. Besides Vice and Angel and Clover, you get what I mean, Dana. And yes, she's the infamous beginner character everyone gets for free, but unfortunately to get the most out of her you do have to work a bit, because outside of her glaring flaws, like for example her hideous column chain, she does have a very strong point in her damage boosting equipment that not only boosts one kind of damage like chain or active, but all damage your Thunder allies do, which makes her a valuable addition to most of your Thunder teams if you have a free slot. But to take fully advantage of that buff, you do need your foes to be on yellow tiles, which sometimes she can arrange, but often it isn't gonna happen. So while that buff is quite alluring and makes her a great addition to burst or especially CC teams, it isn't often active, so that's also the reason why she's only at solid. And we already talked about quite a lot of higher rarity snipers, so let's switch it up by talking about Kafka. She's not only just a 4-star, making her quite a formidable budget sniper DPS option, but also funnily enough better than most of the other snipers we've already talked about, as she's just really straightforward with her raw flag splash damage global sniper chain and her flexible low CD damage skill. So, you might be asking yourself now, why is she here? Is she really better? There's not anything special about her so far. Well, that's where her equipment comes in, which gives her 1 stack whenever you pass through a yellow tile, and these things can stack up to 99 times. And every single one increases your active skill damage by a hefty 4%. Yeah. Your active can hit like a tactical nuke if you're planning ahead properly and show a bit of patience, which overall can let her out-damage the likes of a powerful dragon and the commander of a Luminar Federation. And about that dog, yeah, let's not talk about that. And now, it's once again time to switch to the supporting side of things. And to start things off with a bang, I'm gonna buy some KFC. Wait a minute. Don't be fooled by this definitely very unsuspicious ching, as it probably only wants to honey trap you, which is coincidentally the main ability of our next subjects. The Lumo 4, Keating, K-Eating, Kia Ting, and Keating. Yeah, those are not their names, but yeah, I'm not gonna look those up. And sadly, for every mischievous troublemaker you get in this package, you will also pay cooldown in return, as the skill could be a lot better, but is held back by its quite high 4-turn CD. For a 2-turn taunt with limited range, yeah, I do have to say that the bonus effects are probably a bit annoying to get, but overall still okay. And being able to slightly buff your team is also not too bad. Overall, I can just say that KFC eating is kind of niche and often on the bench, but in a good, creepy way. Unlike our fake kudere, Erika, who is unlike them, more fond of some good old burger. And while she might not exactly be better, her skill is a bit more useful in general, as it's kind of a 2-in-1 deal. Not the good kind, more of ordering a game on eBay and receiving it with some scratches and an expired piece of bonus candy. Because this is a paralyze, which is technically random, but with some gracious movements and gamer moments you can make it work like you want most of the time. And the bonus in this case is resetting all non-yellow tiles, which is fine, I guess. And that's also it. The rest of her is yeah, before my column chain PTSD kicks in again, let's move on to our final solid Aurorian, Rabbi. Okay, let's make this quick. Like I said before, Thunder has only a few TP options, and Rabbi is the best budget one, as she has a global TP on a 3-turn CD and an okay chain on top, which makes her, well, very solid if you're looking to get from point A to point B. And yeah, that actually sounds good, so let's do just that by switching to all Aurorians that are strong. These are top tier characters, or at least close to it, that are often some of the best choices in most scenarios. And you already know the drill by now, our first DPS is the heavyweight when it comes to zapping your foes to dust. Kinda. The champion of the ring. Sure. The queen of skill damage herself, Tessa. And while her personality might not be the best, her active is one of the best skill damage outlets in the game, which is quite impressive if you take her 4-star status into consideration. But all of this is obviously too good to be true and also comes at a cost, a quite huge one at that, which is to having to build most of your team around her. Just imagine Tessa as some sort of flashlight and needs enough batteries to keep going. But in this case, your batteries are your skills. So that means that you want to run as many low CD Aurorians as possible, kind of limiting your options to Fortal Converters, Luke and Co. if you want to get the most out of her. And speaking of options, the next one is... let's just say that I was threatened to be stuffed into a fursuit for the rest of my life if I didn't put those two here. Hachi and Jin. Jokes aside, Harry and Harrier are probably the most underestimated Aurorian in Alchemy Stars. As to why, well, you can leave that up to your imagination, but when you look at facts and logic, you can't really deny that these two good fellow wannabes are actually quite effective at completely annihilating your enemies at a very low cost. And with that I don't even mean their rarity, but the fact that all of their damage comes from their 2-turn CD active, that with some training arcs on your side can push out some really scary numbers. And yeah, that's also one of their two flaws. They're not that easy to use at first, but while that can be fixed quite easily by just fixing your skill issue and getting good, their miserable chain damage is forever going to be the bane of their existence. Or should I say bone? You know, dogs and stuff? No? Okay. Let's just move on to... Daniel de Schwartz. He's sometimes father, sometimes governor, but all times rocking that drip. And I'm not sure where I was going with this, but let's just redirect our focus from his fashion sense to his skill set. And besides being one of the biggest imposters when it comes to role standards, he does offer one unique factor, which is his HP scaling damage, which by the way also hits every enemy on the field, making him also kind of good for farming. But that's besides the point, because he completely shines in endgame content, where he can fully make use of his pirate-like appearance, current HP scaling damage. Overall making Grumpy Santa a decent worthwhile addition to your team, especially in hard content. And that's really all I need to say about him, as he's a man of a few words, which is also the case for our next mercenary, Luke Skywalker, if he would have decided to drop that saber to become a Pokemon trainer, because he's all about throwing those bucks around, which is, like I mentioned earlier, perfect for Tessa, as he boasts a mighty CD of none at all, making his main role, besides being one of the best single target DPS characters for Thunder thanks to his multi-hit chain and DQ, Tessa battery. And speaking of batteries, our next victim probably can charge them as well, but in a more traditional way. Of course I'm talking about the Metal Gear Rising protagonist, Ravi. What can I say? She's just that strong. As the only active Thunder member of the Diagonal Attack gang, she's often a premier choice for the captain slot, which is well deserved considering her powerful damage increasing EQ and her decent wide range covering skill damage. If only she had a better chain, then she would probably be... Let's not dream around here and get moving to our supporting allies. First we have the staple of every OTK team, the cross-converter of the Thunder element, Nemesis. And with her I'm not gonna waste too much of your time, as everyone should already know what's good and bad about her role. To put it in a few words for the few that don't, long CD bad, but huge tile conversion very good. Next, Unimet. Once again another reason why Thunder is by far one of the best budget options for newer and older players alike. She just simply provides a one-tile select conversion on a 1-turn CD, provides a bonus item in a true Super Mario fashion, and tops it all off with an easy access to some heals. For a 3-star, this is already way too much, and solidifies her reason to be here. And if you're still not satisfied, and want even more budget goodness on a similar level that also provides similar advantages, I would normally say no way, but we are in free-to-play heaven here, so here you go. Nadine. If you ever wanted a healer that has conversion, can guide you through dark times, and has, well, even more heals in her arsenal, then she's by far your best choice. On a decent CD, she provides you with a solid heal and a converted tile, and tops it off with a pretty good healing chain and some added bonus light, to blind all of these fools that dare to oppose you. And if you would rather just exterminate them for good, then I can wholeheartedly just switch your attention to female Orochimaru from the Boruto's Dad show. She's the usual double chain support, but with some twists. which is not only a rarity and the upgrades it brings with it, but also the fact that her EQ is just completely dumb strong. And that together with her beautiful detonator chain makes her the choice when wanting to deal with foes quick, aka burst or OTK. Speaking of quick, that was already it, so let's quickly gaze upon the legends of Thunder, as our journey is almost over, but we do still have to look at the brightest light that's just ahead of us. So let's check out our final rating tier. Core. Characters that are, like the name already hints at, core in almost every team, as they are just way too overpowered and achieve things that other Aurorians can't reproduce with the same efficiency and or power. And well, we're finally here. The cream of the crop, the flat to your Lumopolis, and the thunder to your Zeus. And who else but Darth Vader White Hair Edition could be here? That's right, Michael is insane. A teleport skill with a decent CD, a proper detonator chain, and the reason why she's just that good, and which takes her over the edge, her HP based damage, that completely lets her destroy endgame content, making her objectively the best Thunder DPS and probably even one of the best DPS characters in general. Plus she's white-haired tsundere Darth Vader. What else do you want? Well, obviously more converting, but thankfully we do still have the old reliable. But before we actually get to those, we do need to keep our Lumo streak going. So that's why our first core supporting Aurorian is none other than the glorious Chief of Justice and part-time TV judge, Asna from Sword Art Online. She's the baseline for any good future selectile converter, and for those who don't know what prism tiles do, this might be a bit weird, but let me enlighten you. While Iridon only lets you freely choose 2 tiles on the field to convert to yellow, these are prism tiles that can turn into possibly 2 more tiles, giving the Supreme Court member the power to gift you with up to 6 tiles on a 3-turn CD, which is absolutely insane if you consider that you can pretty much choose most of their positions. So she more than deserves her spot here next to the only 2 gacha Aurorians left, which are the obvious choices, Beverly and Gronru. I don't think I have to say much, 4-tile converters are just the standard of really good characters. They bring more stability and lots of it into your RNG tile life, with preemptive strike from the get-go, making them just too good to pass on. And also obviously, the current peak of converters in general. And with us finally reaching the peak of Thunder, my final job is to show you the full list. And with that, there's only one quick question left. Did this list help you? Cause I sure hope it did. But don't forget to take everything you just heard with a grain of salt. And of course, like usual, a huge thanks to all of my channel members, and an extra huge one to the VIPs of the channel, the Grand Warlock and Megaman. That was all from me, have a nice day, and see you next time.